The stagecoach lurched to a violent halt on the dusty Wyoming trail, and Martha Thornton knew with sinking certainty that her worst fear had just come true. "You, madam," the driver barked down from his perch, his weathered face twisted with impatience. "You're going to have to get off. We're overloaded, and these horses can't handle the mountain pass ahead with this much weight." Martha's face burned with humiliation as the other passengers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. At 24 years old, she had always been a substantial woman, broad-shouldered and full-figured, carrying the solid build of her Norwegian ancestors. Her father had called her sturdy, her mother had called her strong, but the stagecoach driver was making it abundantly clear what he thought of her size. "Sir, I paid full fare," Martha said, her voice trembling despite her attempt to sound firm. "I have every right to be on this coach. And I have every right to ensure the safety of my other passengers and my team," the driver shot back. "The station agent in Laramie shouldn't have sold you a ticket without warning you. Now, off you get. There'll be another coach through in 3 days. 3 days. Martha looked around at the desolate landscape surrounding them. They were miles from any town, at a small relay station that consisted of nothing more than a ramshackle building and a corral. The August heat of 1877 beat down mercilessly, and the thought of being stranded here made her stomach clench with fear. "Please," she began, but the driver was already climbing down, clearly intent on physically removing her if necessary. The other passengers averted their eyes as Martha gathered what dignity she could and climbed down from the coach. Her carpet bag was tossed down after her, landing in the dust at her feet. Within moments, the stagecoach was rattling away, leaving her standing alone in a cloud of settling dust. Martha stood there, fighting back tears of rage and humiliation when she heard the thunder of hoofbeats approaching fast. She turned to see a massive rider on an equally impressive horse, bearing down on the departing stagecoach. The man was huge, with shoulders that seemed to span half the width of his mount, and even from a distance, she could see the fury radiating from him. The rider caught up with the stagecoach in seconds, his powerful horse easily outpacing the team. He maneuvered his mount directly into the path of the stage, forcing the driver to rein in sharply or risk a collision. "What in the hell do you think you're doing?" the mountain man roared, his voice carrying clearly back to where Martha stood. He swung down from his horse with a grace that belied his size, and Martha could now see him clearly. He stood well over 6 feet tall, with a thick chest and arms that bulged with muscle beneath his buckskin shirt. His dark hair fell past his shoulders, and a full beard covered his jaw. Everything about him spoke of raw, untamed power. "This ain't none of your concern, Bridger," the driver said, but there was a note of nervousness in his voice now. "Like hell it isn't," the man called Bridger shot back. "I was at the relay station when you dumped that woman off like she was cargo. You got no right to leave a lady stranded out here alone. She's too heavy. The horses can't handle the pass with that much weight." "Your horses look fresh to me," Bridger said, his voice dropping to a dangerous level. "I think you're just a cruel son of a bitch who gets his kicks from humiliating folks." The driver's hand moved toward the rifle prop beside him, but Bridger moved faster than Martha would have thought possible for a man his size. He grabbed the driver by his shirt and hauled him down from the coach with one arm, slamming him against the side of the stage, hard enough to rattle the whole frame. "You're going to turn this coach around, drive back to that relay station, pick up that lady, and take her where she paid to go," Bridger said, his voice deadly calm now. "And you're going to apologize to her while you're at it." "You can't make me," the driver wheezed, but the fear in his eyes told a different story. "I can and I will," Bridger said. "I know your boss, Sam Pritchard. I saved his life back in '73 when his wagon train got caught in a blizzard up in the Tetons. You think he's going to take kindly to hearing you left a paying passenger stranded? That you risked the reputation of his whole company?" The driver's face went pale. "Now, Bridger, there's no need to involve Sam." "Then you know what you need to do." Bridger released the driver, who stumbled and nearly fell. After a moment's hesitation, he climbed back onto the coach and turned the team around. Bridger swung back onto his horse and followed the coach as it made its way back to the relay station. Martha watched them approach, her heart pounding. She had never seen anyone stand up for her like that, especially not a stranger. As the coach pulled to a stop, Bridger dismounted again and walked over to her. Up close, he was even more impressive. His eyes were a striking gray blue, like storm clouds over the mountains, and despite his fierce expression, there was something gentle in the way he looked at her. "Madam," he said, removing his hat. "I'm Cole Bridger. I apologize for what happened to you. It was wrong, and it won't happen again." "I'm Martha Thornton," she managed to say, still overwhelmed by what had just occurred. "Thank you, Mr. Bridger. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't been there." "Nothing good," Cole said grimly. He turned to the driver, who was sitting rigidly on his perch. "Well? I believe you have something to say to Miss Thornton." The driver cleared his throat, not meeting Martha's eyes. "I apologize, madam. I was out of line. Please get back on board." Martha hesitated, not eager to endure the rest of the journey with a man who clearly resented her presence, but Cole seemed to sense her reluctance. "I'll ride alongside the coach the rest of the way to South Pass City," he said. "Make sure there's no more trouble." The warmth in Martha's chest had nothing to do with the August heat. "That's very kind of you, Mr. Bridger, but surely you have your own business to attend to." "Nothing that can't wait," Cole said. "I was heading up to the mountains to check my trap lines, but that can hold another day or two. Besides," he added with a slight smile that transformed his stern face, "it's been a while since I had good company on the trail." Martha found herself smiling back, feeling something flutter in her stomach that had nothing to do with nervousness. She allowed Cole to help her back into the coach, his large hand completely engulfing hers, yet his grip was surprisingly gentle. True to his word, Cole rode alongside the stagecoach for the entire journey. Whenever Martha looked out the window, she could see him there, sitting tall in his saddle, his presence both comforting and stirring something she couldn't quite name. The other passengers, who had been coldly silent toward her before, now seemed almost friendly, as if Cole's defense of her had somehow elevated her status in their eyes. They stopped for the night at another relay station, this one more substantial, with a dining room and sleeping quarters. Martha expected Cole to go his own way, but he appeared at her elbow as she was getting down from the coach. "Would you do me the honor of joining me for supper, Miss Thornton?" he asked. Martha's heart skipped a beat. "I would like that very much, Mr. Bridger." Over a simple meal of venison stew and cornbread, Martha found herself talking more freely than she had in years. There was something about Cole that made her feel safe, seen in a way that had nothing to do with her size or appearance. "I'm traveling to South Pass City to work as a seamstress," she explained. "My cousin owns a dress shop there and needs help. After my parents passed last winter, there wasn't much holding me in Iowa anymore." "I'm sorry about your parents," Cole said, and the sympathy in his voice was genuine. "Thank you. It's been hard, but I'm trying to look at it as a new beginning." She paused, then asked, "What about you? Have you always lived in Wyoming?" Cole nodded, breaking off a piece of cornbread. "Born and raised in these mountains. My father was a trapper, and I followed in his footsteps. I've got a cabin up in the Wind River Range, about a day's ride from South Pass City. I come down to town maybe once a month for supplies and to sell my furs, but otherwise I keep to myself mostly." "That sounds lonely," Martha said softly. Cole's eyes met hers, and she saw something vulnerable flash across his face before he looked away. "It can be," he admitted, "but it's the life I know. After my folks died when I was 17, I couldn't see much point in settling down in town. The mountains, they make sense to me. They don't judge, don't demand things I can't give." Martha understood that feeling more than he knew. "People can be cruel," she said quietly, "sometimes without even meaning to be." "What that driver did to you today," Cole said, his jaw tightening, "that was beyond cruel. That was deliberate meanness, and it made my blood boil to see it." "Why did you help me?" Martha asked, the question that had been burning in her mind all day finally spilling out. "You don't know me. You had no obligation." Cole was quiet for a long moment, turning his coffee cup in his hands. "I guess because I know what it's like to be judged for things you can't help," he finally said. "People look at me and see a savage, someone barely civilized. They cross the street when they see me coming, clutch their children close. They think because I live in the mountains and wear buckskins that I'm somehow less than human." Martha felt a surge of anger on his behalf. "That's ridiculous. You're one of the most honorable men I've ever met, and I've only known you a few hours." Cole's eyes locked on hers, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. "You're a remarkable woman, Martha Thornton," he said softly. They sat there for a long moment, the air between them crackling with something neither of them had quite expected. Finally, Cole cleared his throat and stood. I should let you get some rest, he said. We've got another long day of travel tomorrow. Martha nodded, not trusting her voice. As she made her way to the women's sleeping quarters, she could feel Cole's eyes on her, and she found herself hoping with a fierceness that surprised her that this wouldn't be the last she saw of him. The next day's journey was harder than the first. The terrain grew increasingly rough as they climbed toward South Pass, and the coach swayed and jolted over the rocky trail. But whenever Martha felt anxious, she would look out the window and see Cole there, steady and solid, and her fear would ease. They reached South Pass City late in the afternoon of the second day. The mining town was a chaotic jumble of buildings clinging to the mountainside, filled with prospectors, merchants, and all manner of frontier folk. The coach pulled to a stop in front of the express office, and Martha gathered her belongings with a strange sense of reluctance. Cole was there to help her down, and as her feet touched the ground, she realized she didn't want to say goodbye to him. "Thank you again, Mr. Bridger," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'll never forget your kindness." "It wasn't kindness," Cole said, his voice rough. "It was just doing what was right." He hesitated, then added, "Your cousin's dress shop, where is it?" "On Main Street, I believe. Mrs. Adelaide Foster's establishment." "I know the place," Cole said. "Good woman, Mrs. Foster." He paused again, seeming to struggle with something, then finally said in a rush, "Miss Thornton, I meant what I said about coming to town once a month for supplies. Would it be all right if I called on you when I'm in town?" Martha's heart soared. "I would like that very much, Mr. Bridger." "Cole," he said softly. "Please call me Cole." "Then you must call me Martha." He smiled, that transformative smile that made his whole face light up. "Martha," he repeated, as if testing how her name felt on his tongue. "I'll be back in 2 weeks. That's when I usually make my supply run." "I'll look forward to it," Martha said, and she meant it with every fiber of her being. Cole helped her carry her bags to the dress shop, where her cousin Adelaide came rushing out, a plump woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a welcoming smile. "Martha, oh my dear, you're finally here." Adelaide embraced her warmly, then noticed Cole standing there with Martha's carpet bag. "And who is this fine gentleman?" "This is Cole Bridger, cousin Adelaide. He helped me during my journey here." Adelaide's eyes sparkled with understanding as she looked between them. "Well, Mr. Bridger, thank you for seeing my cousin safely here. You must come for supper soon." "Thank you, madam," Cole said, tipping his hat. His eyes found Martha's one more time. 2 weeks, he said softly, just for her. 2 weeks, Martha echoed, and watched as he swung onto his horse and rode out of town, her heart already counting down the days. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of activity. Adelaide's dress shop was thriving, serving not just the miners' wives and daughters, but also the madams and working girls from the saloons who wanted fashionable dresses. Martha threw herself into the work, grateful for the distraction, but Cole was never far from her thoughts. Adelaide proved to be not just a cousin, but a true friend. On their third evening together, as they sat in the cozy apartment above the shop doing mending by lamplight, Adelaide broached the subject Martha had been both hoping for and dreading. "So," Adelaide said with studied casualness, "this Cole Bridger, he seems quite taken with you." Martha felt her cheeks warm. "I don't know about that. He was just being kind." "Martha Thornton, I've lived in this territory for 15 years, and I've seen Cole Bridger in town dozens of times. He's never once looked at a woman the way he looked at you, and he certainly never offered to call on anyone before." "Really?" Martha tried to keep the hope out of her voice and failed miserably. Adelaide smiled gently. "Really. He's a good man, Martha. Keeps to himself mostly, but he's honest and hardworking. A few years back, he tracked down a group of outlaws who robbed the express office and returned every cent they'd stolen. Wouldn't even accept a reward." "He seems too good to be true," Martha admitted. "I keep waiting for there to be some catch." "The only catch is that he lives up in those mountains and likes his solitude," Adelaide said. "But for the right woman, I suspect he'd be willing to make some changes." Martha's heart squeezed with longing. "Adelaide, you've seen me. You know I'm not the kind of woman men court. What happened on the Stagecoach, that's not the first time I've been treated that way because of my size." Adelaide set down her mending and reached for Martha's hand. "Now you listen to me, Martha. You're a beautiful, strong, capable woman, and any man who can't see that is a fool. But more importantly, Cole Bridger clearly already sees it. The way he looked at you, that wasn't pity or kindness. That was a man who saw something that caught his interest and his heart. Martha blinked back tears. "I'm scared," she whispered. "What if I let myself hope and it all falls apart?" "That's the risk we all take when we open our hearts," Adelaide said gently. "But I think Cole Bridger is worth the risk." The 2 weeks crawled by with agonizing slowness, but finally, on a bright September morning, Martha was helping a customer when the bell over the shop door jingled. She looked up, and her breath caught in her throat. Cole stood in the doorway, looking somehow even larger and more impressive than she remembered. He'd trimmed his beard slightly and was wearing a clean buckskin shirt, his dark hair tied back with a leather cord. In his hands, he held a bouquet of wildflowers that looked almost comically small against his massive frame. "Hello, Martha," he said, and the warmth in his voice made her knees weak. "Hello, Cole," she managed to reply, aware that every woman in the shop had stopped what they were doing to stare at this mountain of a man. Adelaide materialized from the back room, her eyes twinkling. "Mr. Bridger, how lovely to see you. Martha, why don't you take your lunch break a bit early today? I'm sure Mr. Bridger would enjoy showing you around town." Martha glanced at the clock. It was barely 11, but she wasn't about to argue. She quickly removed her apron and retrieved her shawl. Cole offered her the flowers with an almost shy expression that seemed incongruous on such a formidable man. "I picked these up in the high meadows," he said. "They reminded me of you, strong and beautiful, thriving in harsh conditions." Martha took the flowers, touched beyond words. "They're lovely, Cole. Thank you." They walked out into the September sunshine, and Martha was acutely aware of the looks they were drawing. Cole seemed oblivious to the stares, his attention focused entirely on her. "How have you been?" he asked as they walked down Main Street. "Is the work suiting you?" "Very well," Martha said. "Adelaide is wonderful, and I'm enjoying the work. The town is livelier than I expected." "Gold and silver will do that," Cole said. "Though it won't last forever. These mining towns, they boom and then they bust. But while it's booming, there's plenty of opportunity." They walked to the edge of town, where the buildings gave way to the sweeping vistas of the mountains beyond. Cole led her to a large flat rock overlooking the valley, and they sat together, the September breeze cool against their faces. "I've been thinking about you every day," Cole said suddenly, his eyes fixed on the distant peaks. "I told myself I was being a fool, that a woman like you would never be interested in a rough mountain man like me. But I couldn't stay away." Martha's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. "I've been thinking about you too," she admitted, "hoping you'd come." Cole turned to look at her, and the vulnerability in his eyes took her breath away. "Martha, I'm not a man who's good with words or fancy manners. I don't know how to court a lady proper, but I know that from the moment I saw you standing there in the dust, something in me recognized something in you. Like calls to like, my mother used to say." "What are you saying, Cole?" Martha asked, hardly daring to breathe. "I'm saying that I'd like to get to know you better, to spend time with you when I'm in town, to see if this feeling between us is real or just wishful thinking on my part." Martha reached out and took his large, calloused hand in hers. "It's not wishful thinking," she said softly. "I feel it too." Cole's fingers closed around hers, gentle despite their strength. They sat there for a long while, hands clasped, looking out over the mountains, and Martha felt something settle in her chest, like a puzzle piece, finally clicking into place. Over the next few months, Cole became a regular presence in Martha's life. He came to town every 2 weeks like clockwork, and each visit, Martha found herself falling deeper in love with him. He was unlike any man she'd ever known, gentle and considerate, despite his size and strength, with a quiet intelligence and a dry sense of humor that surprised and delighted her. They would take long walks around town, and Cole would tell her about the mountains, about the animals he encountered, and the changing of the seasons at higher elevations. In turn, Martha would tell him about her work, about the women who came into the shop and their stories. Cole listened with genuine interest, asking questions and remembering details from one visit to the next. Adelaide watched their courtship with approval, often inviting Cole to supper when he was in town. On one such evening in early October, as they sat around Adelaide's table enjoying a hearty beef stew, Adelaide asked Cole about his cabin. It's nothing fancy," Cole said, mopping up gravy with a piece of bread. "One room, with a sleeping loft and a good stone fireplace. I built it myself about 8 years ago, up near the tree line where the hunting and trapping are best. There's a creek nearby for water and a meadow where I keep my horses in the summer. It sounds isolated, Adelaide observed, though her tone was curious rather than critical. It is, Cole admitted. Most of the year, I might go weeks without seeing another soul. But I know every inch of those mountains, every trail and valley. It's home to me. Don't you ever get lonely? Martha asked softly. Cole's eyes found hers across the table. I used to think I didn't, he said quietly. But lately, I've been feeling the loneliness more. The cabin seems emptier when I go back to it after being here. The weight of his words hung in the air, and Martha felt her cheeks warm under his steady gaze. As winter approached, Cole's visits became more precious. In late October, he arrived with concerning news. We're going to have an early winter, he told Martha as they sat in the shop's back room, where Adelaide had tactfully left them alone. I can feel it in the air, see it in how the animals are behaving. I'll need to stay up at the cabin through the worst of it, make sure my supplies hold out and my trap lines stay clear. Martha's heart sank. How long will you be gone? Could be 3 months, maybe 4 if the snow is bad, Cole said, and she could hear the regret in his voice. I'll come down as soon as the passes are clear enough to travel. That's a long time, Martha whispered, feeling tears prick at her eyes. Cole reached out and cupped her face in his large, warm hand. Martha, I need to ask you something, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. What is it? These past few months getting to know you, they've been the happiest of my life, Cole said, his voice rough with emotion. When I'm up in those mountains alone, all I can think about is getting back to you. And I've been wondering if maybe it's time for me to think about building a life that includes more than just me in the wilderness. Martha's breath caught. What are you saying, Cole? I'm saying that I love you, Martha Thornton, he said, his storm cloud eyes intense with feeling. I love your strength and your kindness, your laugh and the way you see the world. I love everything about you, and I don't want to spend another winter alone in those mountains when my heart is here with you. Tears were streaming down Martha's face now. I love you too, Cole. I have for weeks now, but I was afraid to say it. Cole pulled her into his arms, and Martha went willingly, resting her head against his broad chest and feeling the steady thunder of his heartbeat. His arms wrapped around her, and she felt safer and more cherished than she ever had in her life. I know we haven't been courting long, Cole said into her hair, and I know I'm not the kind of man most women dream of. But Martha, I promise you, if you'll have me, I'll spend every day of my life making sure you never regret it. Martha pulled back just enough to look up at him. Are you asking me to marry you, Cole Bridger? I am, he said, a slight tremor in his voice. I know it's fast, and I know my life isn't easy. The winters are hard, and the cabin is small, and there are days when the loneliness of the mountains can weigh on a person. But I swear to you, Martha, I'll do everything in my power to make you happy. Martha reached up and touched his bearded cheek. Yes, she said simply. Yes, I'll marry you. The joy that blazed across Cole's face was like the sun breaking through storm clouds. He lowered his head and kissed her, gentle at first, then with growing passion. Martha kissed him back, pouring all her love and hope and trust into that kiss. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cole rested his forehead against hers. I want to do this proper, he said. I'll talk to the preacher tomorrow, see if he can marry us before I have to head back up to the cabin. So soon? Martha's mind was whirling. I don't want to leave you behind, Cole said. I want you to come with me if you're willing. I know it's asking a lot for you to leave Adelaide in the shop, to come live in the mountains with me. But Martha, I can't bear the thought of being apart from you for 3 or 4 months, not now that I've finally told you how I feel. Martha thought about what he was asking. It was terrifying, the idea of leaving behind the life she'd only just started building. But then she looked into Cole's eyes and saw her future there, and suddenly, the choice was easy. I'll come with you, she said. I'll need to talk to Adelaide, but yes, Cole, I'll come with you. Adelaide, as it turned out, was thrilled, if somewhat emotional about the news. I always hoped you'd find happiness, Martha, she said, wiping at her eyes. And Cole is a good man, but, oh, I'll miss you. I'll miss you too, Martha said, embracing her cousin. But we'll visit when we can, won't we, Cole? Every chance we get, Cole assured Adelaide, and you're always welcome to visit the cabin, though I warn you it's a hard ride up the mountain. I might just take you up on that come spring, Adelaide said with a watery smile. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Cole spoke to Reverend Morrison, who agreed to perform the ceremony in 3 days' time. Martha and Adelaide worked frantically to alter one of the shop's nicest dresses for Martha to wear, a deep blue wool that brought out her eyes and fit her figure beautifully. Cole spent his time gathering supplies for the winter, buying extra food and fabric and all the things Martha might need in the mountains. He also spent an afternoon in the back of the blacksmith's shop, and when he emerged, he had a simple gold band that he'd had made for Martha. The wedding took place on a crisp November morning in the small church at the edge of town. Adelaide stood up with Martha, and the town's deputy, a friend of Cole's named Jim Hawkins, stood up with Cole. There were perhaps a dozen other people in attendance, mostly customers from Adelaide's shop who had grown fond of Martha. Martha walked down the short aisle in her blue dress, her hair pinned up with a few wildflowers that Cole had somehow managed to find despite the approaching winter. When she reached Cole's side and saw the love and wonder in his eyes as he looked at her, she knew with absolute certainty that she was making the right choice. Reverend Morrison performed the ceremony with warmth and sincerity, and when he pronounced them man and wife, Cole's kiss was gentle and reverent, a promise sealed with his lips. The small congregation cheered, and Adelaide hosted a simple reception at the dress shop with cake and coffee and good wishes. But as the afternoon wore on and the sky began to darken, Cole drew Martha aside. "We should head out soon," he said quietly. "I want to get at least part way up the mountain before we make camp for the night." Martha nodded, her stomach fluttering with a mixture of nerves and excitement. She changed into the practical traveling clothes Cole had helped her select, warm wool trousers, which had felt scandalous to wear at first, a thick flannel shirt, and a heavy coat lined with fur. Cole had also gotten her sturdy boots and a wide-brimmed hat. They said their goodbyes to Adelaide, who clung to Martha for a long moment. "Be happy," she whispered in Martha's ear, "and come visit me in the spring." "I promise," Martha whispered back. Cole helped Martha onto the horse he'd bought for her, a gentle mare named Daisy, and they rode out of South Pass City as the sun was setting, painting the mountains in shades of gold and crimson. They traveled for about 3 hours before Cole called a halt in a sheltered grove. "We'll camp here tonight," he said, already swinging down from his horse. "Get a fresh start in the morning." Martha watched in admiration as Cole efficiently set up their camp. He had a small tent that he erected with practiced ease, then built a fire and started preparing a simple supper of beans and salt pork. Martha tried to help, but she quickly realized that Cole had a system, and the best thing she could do was stay out of his way. "I'll teach you everything," Cole said gently, seeing her frustrated expression. "But tonight, let me take care of you." After they'd eaten, Cole banked the fire and led Martha into the tent. It was snug but warm, with bedrolls and blankets spread out on the ground. Martha suddenly felt shy, acutely aware that this was her wedding night, and she was alone with this man who was now her husband. Cole seemed to sense her nervousness. He took her hands in his and looked into her eyes. "Martha, I need you to know something. I love you, and I want you in every way a man can want his wife. But we've had a long day, and we have a hard ride ahead of us tomorrow. If you're tired, if you need time, I can wait." Martha felt a surge of love for this gentle giant of a man. "I'm not tired," she said softly, "and I don't want to wait." Cole's eyes darkened with desire, and he cupped her face in his hands, kissing her with a passion that made her head spin. His hands, so large and strong, were infinitely gentle as he slowly removed her clothes, worshipping each inch of revealed skin with his lips and hands. Martha had always been self-conscious about her body, but the way Cole looked at her, touched her, made her feel beautiful and desired. He murmured words of love and praise as he explored her curves, and when they finally came together, it was with a tenderness and intensity that brought tears to Martha's eyes. Afterwards, they lay tangled together in the bedrolls, Martha's head resting on Cole's broad chest as he stroked her hair. "I love you, Martha Bridger," he murmured into the darkness. Martha smiled at the sound of her new name. "I love you too, Cole Bridger, more than I ever thought possible." They spent 2 more days traveling up into the mountains, following trails that were barely visible to Martha's untrained eyes, but that Cole navigated with ease. The landscape was breathtaking, all soaring peaks and deep valleys, with pine forests and rushing streams. Martha had never been much of a rider, but Daisy was patient with her, and Cole was always nearby, ready to help if she needed it. On the third day, they crested a ridge, and Cole pointed down into the valley below. "There," he said, pride evident in his voice. "That's home." Martha looked down and saw a snug cabin nestled in a small clearing with a barn and corral nearby. Smoke was rising from the chimney, and she looked at Cole in surprise. "I came up here last week and got the place ready," he explained. "Stocked the firewood, aired everything out, got the stove going so it would be warm when we arrived." Tears pricked at Martha's eyes at his thoughtfulness. They made their way down the slope, and as they drew closer, Martha could see that while the cabin was indeed small, it was solidly built and well maintained. Cole had clearly put a lot of work into making it a home. Inside, the cabin was one large room, maybe 20 feet square, with a sleeping loft accessible by a sturdy ladder. There was a stone fireplace at one end, with a good stove for cooking, and windows that let in the afternoon light. The furniture was simple but well made. A table with 2 chairs, a rocking chair near the fireplace, shelves for supplies and clothes, and a washstand. "I know it's not much," Cole said, watching Martha take it all in. "It's perfect," Martha said, and meant it. She could already see ways to make it more comfortable, could imagine the two of them here through the long winter, safe and warm and together. The first weeks in the cabin were an adjustment for Martha. She had to learn how to cook on the wood stove, how to manage their supplies, how to deal with the altitude and the cold. Cole was patient with her, teaching her everything she needed to know. He also taught her about the mountains, taking her on walks around their valley and showing her the landmarks, teaching her to read the weather and recognize animal tracks. Martha had always been strong, but living in the mountains made her even stronger. She learned to split wood, to haul water from the creek, to help Cole with the horses and his trap lines. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire, and Cole would work on his traps or tan hides while Martha sewed, making curtains for the windows and a quilt for their bed. They would talk for hours, sharing stories from their pasts, dreaming about their future. "I'd like to have children someday," Martha said one night as they lay in the loft wrapped in each other's arms. "If we're blessed with them." Cole's hand splayed across her stomach, and she felt him smile against her hair. "I'd like that too," he said. "This cabin gets mighty quiet with just the two of us. Can you imagine it full of little ones?" "We'd need to add on," Martha said. "Build another room or 2. "I can do that," Cole said. "Come spring, when the ground thaws, I'll start on an addition. We'll need more space anyway, if we're going to make a real go of living up here." Winter set in with a vengeance in mid-December. The snow fell thick and heavy, piling up outside the cabin until Martha could barely see out the windows. But inside, they were warm and safe, with plenty of supplies and each other for company. Cole was attentive and loving, never missing an opportunity to tell Martha how much he loved her, or to show her with gentle touches and passionate kisses. Martha blossomed under his care, becoming more confident and comfortable in her own skin. On Christmas morning, Martha woke to find that Cole had carved her a beautiful jewelry box from pine, decorated with intricate mountain scenes. She gave him a warm wool shirt she'd made, dyed a deep blue with berries she'd gathered in the fall. "I've never had a Christmas this perfect," Martha said as they sat by the fire, drinking coffee and watching the snow fall outside. "Neither have I," Cole admitted. "I used to dread the holidays, all alone up here. But with you, everything is different. Everything is better." January brought even heavier snows, and there were days when Cole couldn't even get out to check his trap lines, but he didn't seem to mind. He spent the time working on the addition he'd promised, drawing up plans and making a list of supplies he'd need come spring. In early February, Martha began to suspect that she might be pregnant. She waited another few weeks to be sure, but by the beginning of March, she was certain. One evening, as they were finishing supper, she decided to tell Cole. "I have something to tell you," she said, her heart pounding with excitement and nerves. Cole looked up from his plate, his expression immediately concerned. "What is it? Are you all right?" "I'm fine," Martha assured him. "Better than fine, actually. Cole, I'm going to have a baby." For a moment, Cole just stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his face, transforming it into something radiant. "A baby?" he repeated, his voice choked with emotion. "Martha, are you sure?" "As sure as I can be," Martha said, smiling through happy tears. Cole was out of his chair in an instant, pulling Martha into his arms and holding her as if she were made of spun glass. "A baby," he kept repeating, wonder in his voice. "We're going to have a baby." That night, as they lay in the loft, Cole's hand resting gently on Martha's still flat stomach, they talked about the future with new urgency. "We should think about being closer to town," Cole said. "Just for the birth, at least. I don't want you up here when your time comes, too far from a doctor or a midwife." "We could go down to stay with Adelaide in the late summer," Martha suggested. "Have the baby in South Pass City, then come back up here in the fall." "That might work," Cole agreed, then fell silent for a moment. "Martha, I've been thinking. Maybe it's time for me to consider a different kind of life. I love these mountains, but I love you more. And soon we'll have a child to think about. Maybe I should look into other work, something that would let us live in town part of the year." Martha turned to look at him in the dim light. "Cole, I don't want you to give up who you are for me. I knew what I was signing up for when I married you." "You're not asking me to give anything up," Cole said. "I'm choosing to. These mountains, they'll always be here. But you and our baby, you're my priority now. I've been thinking I could hire on at the express office, or maybe work as a guide for hunting parties, something that would give us a steady income and keep me closer to home." "We can talk about it more come spring," Martha said. "Figure out what makes the most sense for our family." "Our family," Cole repeated softly, a smile in his voice. "I like the sound of that." The snow began to melt in late March, and by early April the passes were clear enough for travel. Cole and Martha made the journey down to South Pass City, leading a pack horse laden with furs and pelts that Cole would sell. Adelaide's joy at seeing them was eclipsed only by her excitement when Martha told her about the baby. "Oh, my dear, that's wonderful news," she cried, embracing Martha carefully. "You'll stay with me, won't you? When it's time?" "If you'll have us," Martha said. "Have you? Of course I'll have you. I've missed you both terribly." They spent a week in town, and during that time, Cole made inquiries about other work. To his surprise, he was offered a position as a deputy sheriff. The current sheriff, a man named Tom Bradshaw, had known Cole for years and trusted him implicitly. "The pay's decent, and you'd have a steady income," Sheriff Bradshaw said. "Plus, there's a small house that comes with the job, nothing fancy, but it would be yours. You could spend the winters in town if you wanted. Head up to your cabin in the summers." Cole discussed the offer with Martha that evening. "It's more money than I'd make trapping," he said, "and it would mean we could give our child a more stable life, but it would also mean giving up a lot of my freedom." "What do you want to do?" Martha asked. Cole was quiet for a long moment. "I think I want to take it," he finally said. "The mountains will always be there, and we can still spend our summers at the cabin, but being a deputy, that's honest work, and it would mean I could be here for you and the baby." "Then I think you should take it," Martha said, taking his hand, "as long as you're sure it's what you want." "I'm sure," Cole said. "My priorities have changed, Martha. You and our baby, you're what matters now." Cole accepted the position, and they spent the next few weeks getting settled into the small house that came with the job. It was simple but comfortable, with 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, and a sitting room. Martha immediately set about making it a home, sewing curtains and arranging their few possessions. Cole took to his new work with the same dedication he'd brought to mountain living. He was fair and honest, and his size and reputation meant that most troublemakers thought twice before causing problems when Deputy Bridger was around. The summer passed in a blur of happiness. Martha's pregnancy progressed smoothly, and she continued working at Adelaide's shop until she was too big to comfortably stand at the sewing machine for long periods. Cole was attentive and protective, fussing over her constantly, but in a way that made Martha feel cherished rather than smothered. They spent a few weeks at the cabin in July, and Cole began work on the addition, framing in 2 new rooms that would serve as bedrooms for their growing family. Martha helped where she could, but mostly she sat in the shade and watched her husband work, marveling at the life they'd built together. In early September, Martha went into labor. Cole, despite all his frontier skills and his experience dealing with emergencies, was a nervous wreck. He paced outside the bedroom where Adelaide and the midwife, Mrs. Patterson, were helping Martha, driving Adelaide to distraction until she finally ordered him to go wait at the sheriff's office. After 12 hours of labor, Martha gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him James Thomas Bridger, after Cole's father and Martha's father. Cole cried when he held his son for the first time, tears streaming down his face as he looked at the tiny, perfect baby in his arms. "He's so small," Cole whispered in awe. "So perfect." "He's beautiful," Martha agreed, exhausted but happy, just like his father. Over the next few months, they settled into their new life as parents. Cole proved to be a natural father, patient and gentle with little James. He would come home from his shifts at the sheriff's office and immediately take the baby, bouncing him and singing to him in a surprisingly pleasant baritone. Martha recovered well from the birth and returned to helping Adelaide at the shop a few days a week, bringing James with her. The baby was good-natured and rarely fussy, and he quickly became a favorite among Adelaide's customers. As winter set in again, their first year of marriage came full circle. On a cold November evening, as they sat by the fire in their little house, James asleep in his cradle nearby, Martha reflected on how much her life had changed. "A year ago, I was being thrown off a stagecoach in the middle of nowhere," she said softly. "If someone had told me then that I'd be here now, married to the most wonderful man I've ever known, with a beautiful baby, I never would have believed them." Cole pulled her closer against his side. "Best thing that driver ever did was leave you behind," he said. "Otherwise, I never would have found you." "Do you ever regret it?" Martha asked. "Giving up your life in the mountains, taking this job?" "Not for a second," Cole said firmly. "Martha, you and James, you're my whole world now. The mountains are still there when I want them. But this, right here, this is everything I never knew I wanted." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the fire and listening to their son's soft breathing. Finally, Martha said, "I love you, Cole Bridger. Thank you for seeing me that day, for standing up for me, for giving me this life." "I love you too, Martha," Cole said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head, "and I'd do it all again in a heartbeat. Riding after that stagecoach in a fury was the best decision I ever made." As the years passed, their family grew. Martha gave birth to a daughter, Emily Rose, 2 years after James, and then another son, Samuel Cole, 2 years after that. The little house was bursting at the seams, so Cole built an addition, adding 2 more bedrooms and expanding the kitchen. Cole continued his work as a deputy, eventually becoming the sheriff when Tom Bradshaw retired in 1883. He was respected throughout the territory, known for his fairness and his unwavering commitment to justice. But he never forgot his roots in the mountains, and every summer the whole family would spend a month at the cabin, where Cole taught his children to fish and hunt and read the wilderness the way he did. Martha's skills as a seamstress were in high demand, and she and Adelaide expanded the dress shop, eventually hiring 2 more women to help with the workload. Martha took pride in her work and in being able to contribute to the family's income, though Cole always made sure she knew that her worth had nothing to do with money. The stagecoach incident became something of a legend in South Pass City, though the story improved with each telling. Some versions had Cole stopping the coach at gunpoint, others had him wrestling the driver to the ground. Cole would just shake his head and smile when he heard these stories, but Martha knew that he was proud of what he'd done that day, proud that he'd stood up for her when no one else would. In the spring of 1885, they received word that the stagecoach driver, a man named Hector Barnes, had been fired from his position after one too many complaints about his treatment of passengers. Cole just nodded when he heard the news, satisfied that karma had caught up with the man. Their children grew strong and healthy, thriving in the mountain air and under the care of their loving parents. James had his father's size and strength, while Emily had her mother's gentle nature and skill with a needle. Samuel was a perfect blend of both parents, with Cole's adventurous spirit and Martha's kind heart. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Cole surprised Martha by taking her back up to the cabin, just the 2 of them, while Adelaide watched the children. It was November again, the same time of year they'd been married, and the mountains were dusted with the first snows of winter. "Do you remember our first night here?" Cole asked as they sat by the fire in the cabin, wrapped in blankets in each other's arms. "I was so nervous," Martha admitted with a laugh. "I didn't know anything about living in the mountains, and I was terrified I'd disappoint you." "You could never disappoint me," Cole said, tightening his arms around her. "Martha, these 10 years with you have been the best of my life. You've given me so much, not just our children, but a reason to be better, to want more from life." "You've given me just as much," Martha said softly. You saw me when everyone else just saw someone in the way, someone to be discarded. You made me believe I was worth something. You're worth everything, Cole said fiercely. And I thank God every day that driver was stupid enough to leave you behind, because it led you straight to me. They made love that night with the tenderness and passion of longtime lovers who still couldn't get enough of each other. Afterward, as they lay tangled together in the loft, Martha thought about the strange, beautiful journey that had brought her to this moment. In 1887, when Martha was 34 and Cole was 38, they welcomed their fourth and final child, a daughter they named Grace Adelaide, after the cousin who had been such an important part of their story. Adelaide was overjoyed to have a namesake and spoiled little Grace shamelessly. The years continued to roll by, bringing both joys and sorrows. They lost Adelaide to pneumonia in 1889, a blow that devastated Martha. But Cole was there to hold her through her grief, just as she'd been there for him when his old friend Jim Hawkins died in a saloon shooting in 1891. Through it all, their love remained constant, a steady flame that warmed them through good times and bad. They never took each other for granted, never forgot the miracle of finding each other against all odds. As their children grew and started families of their own, Cole and Martha found themselves looking forward to their golden years. Cole retired as sheriff in 1895 at the age of 46, his body finally showing the wear of years of hard living. But he was still strong, still protective of his family, still the man who had ridden after a stagecoach in fury because he couldn't stand to see injustice done. They spent more time at the cabin in those later years, enjoying the peace and solitude, though they were always happy when their children and grandchildren came to visit. James had become a lawyer, practicing in Cheyenne. Emily had married a doctor and lived in Laramie. Samuel had followed in his father's footsteps and become a mountain man and guide, while Grace had surprised everyone by becoming a teacher. On a warm summer evening in 1898, Cole and Martha sat on the porch of their cabin, watching the sunset over the mountains they'd called home for so many years. They were both graying now, their faces lined with age and experience, but their hands were still clasped together, and their love was as strong as ever. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if that driver hadn't left me behind? Martha asked, a question she'd pondered many times over the years. Sometimes, Cole admitted, but I figure things worked out the way they were meant to. Maybe if it hadn't been that stagecoach, we would have found each other some other way. Seems to me that when two people are meant to be together, fate has a way of making it happen. I like that thought, Martha said, leaning her head on his shoulder, that we were always meant to find each other. I know we were, Cole said with certainty. From the first moment I saw you, I knew. Something in me recognized something in you, and I couldn't have ridden away even if I'd wanted to. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Finally, Martha said, I've had a good life, Cole. Better than I ever dreamed possible. We're not done yet, Cole said with a smile. We've got a lot more years ahead of us and a whole mess of grandchildren to spoil. And he was right. They lived to celebrate their 30th wedding anniversary, their children and grandchildren gathering at the cabin for a celebration that lasted 3 days. By then, they had 9 grandchildren, with more on the way. Cole remained robust well into his 60s, still able to ride and hunt and split wood, though Martha scolded him when he overdid it. Martha's hair had gone completely white, but her blue eyes were still bright, and her hands, though gnarled with arthritis, could still create beautiful works of art with needle and thread. In the summer of 1905, they took one last trip up to the cabin together. Cole was 66, Martha was 52, and they both knew that this might be their final summer in the mountains they loved. Cole's heart wasn't what it used to be, and the altitude was getting harder on him. They spent a month there, just the two of them, reliving memories and making new ones. On their last night, they sat by the fire, hands clasped, and Cole said, I want you to know something, Martha. If I had my life to live over again, I wouldn't change a single thing. Every moment with you has been a gift. Even the hard times? Martha asked with a gentle smile. Especially the hard times, Cole said, because we got through them together, and that made us stronger. They returned to their house in South Pass City, and Cole spent the fall and winter enjoying his family and his grandchildren. On a cold February morning in 1906, he passed away peacefully in his sleep, Martha's hand in his. Martha grieved for her husband, but she took comfort in the knowledge that they'd had 31 beautiful years together, that they'd built a life and a family that would endure long after they were gone. She lived another 12 years, long enough to see her grandchildren grown and to meet several great-grandchildren. When Martha passed away in 1918 at the age of 65, she was buried next to Cole in the South Pass City Cemetery under a simple stone that read, "Martha and Cole Bridger, beloved husband and wife, together forever." Their children made sure that the cabin in the mountains was maintained and passed down through the generations, a testament to the love story that had begun with a furious ride and an act of compassion on a dusty Wyoming trail in 1877. And if you visit that cabin today, some say you can still feel the presence of the love that was built there, the warmth of two souls who found each other against all odds and created something beautiful that would last forever. The story of the stagecoach driver who left a heavy woman behind and the mountain man who rode after them in fury became a legend in Wyoming, passed down through generations as a reminder that true love sees beyond appearances, that heroes come in all forms, and that sometimes the cruelest moments can lead to the most beautiful beginnings. Their descendants still tell the story at family gatherings about how great-grandpa Cole couldn't stand by and watch an injustice happen, about how he saw past what society deemed imperfect and recognized the beautiful soul within, about how great-grandma Martha had the courage to trust in love, to leave everything she knew and build a new life in the mountains with a man who saw her for who she truly was. The dress shop that Martha and Adelaide built still stands in South Pass City, now a historical landmark. Tourists can visit and see some of Martha's original work, the beautiful dresses and quilts that showcase her talent. In the small museum, there's a photograph of Cole and Martha taken on their 20th anniversary. In it, Cole stands tall and proud behind his seated wife, his large hands resting gently on her shoulders. Both are smiling, and the love between them is so palpable it seems to radiate from the photograph itself. The cabin in the Wind River Range is occasionally rented out to hikers and nature lovers, and the family makes sure to tell each guest about its history. Some visitors report feeling an unusual sense of peace there, of warmth and welcome, as if the love that once filled that small space has somehow been absorbed into its walls. Cole and Martha's story proves that the most powerful love stories aren't about perfect people or ideal circumstances. They're about real people with real challenges who choose each other every single day. They're about seeing beyond the surface to the heart beneath, about standing up for what's right even when it's inconvenient, about having the courage to reach for happiness even when the world tells you it's not meant for people like you. Their great-great-granddaughter, a writer living in Jackson Hole, finally published their story in 2015, after years of compiling letters, journals, and family oral histories. The book became a regional bestseller, touching readers who saw themselves in Martha's struggle for acceptance or in Cole's quiet strength. But the real legacy of Cole and Martha Bridger isn't in books or museums or historical landmarks. It's in the family they created, in the values they instilled, in the example they set of what true love really means. It's in their descendants who inherited Martha's kindness and Cole's sense of justice, who learned from their example that real strength lies not in physical power, but in the courage to be vulnerable, to open your heart even when you've been hurt. The mountains of Wyoming still stand tall and proud, just as they did when Cole first brought Martha home to his cabin. The trails are still there, winding through valleys and over ridges, though they're easier to travel now than they were in 1877. But the spirit of the Wild West that Cole and Martha knew, that sense of possibility and new beginnings, that still exists for those who know where to look for it. Their love story started with an act of cruelty, with a woman being left behind because of prejudice and thoughtlessness. But it transformed into something beautiful, because one man chose to see injustice and act, because one woman chose to be brave enough to trust again. They built their happy ending one day at a time, through hard work and dedication and unwavering commitment to each other. And in the end, isn't that what every great love story is really about? Not the dramatic gestures or the perfect moments, but the daily choice to love, to honor, to cherish. Cole Bridger rode after that stagecoach in fury, But what he found was something far more powerful than anger. He found love, true and lasting, the kind that endures through decades and lives on in memory and legacy long after the lovers themselves are gone. Martha and Cole Bridger lived, loved, struggled, and triumphed together. They faced the challenges of frontier life with courage and grace. They raised 4 children who grew up knowing they were loved unconditionally. They created a partnership based on mutual respect and genuine affection. And they proved beyond any doubt that when the right people find each other, when they choose each other despite what the world might say, they can create something that lasts forever. Their story is a reminder that heroes don't always wear badges or carry guns, though Cole certainly did both. Sometimes, heroism is simply refusing to let cruelty go unchallenged. Sometimes, it's seeing the worth in someone that society has deemed worthless. Sometimes it's having the courage to open your heart when it would be so much safer to keep it closed. And their story is a reminder that love, real love, doesn't care about size or appearance or social expectations. It sees the soul, recognizes its match, and holds on tight, refusing to let go no matter what challenges arise. The stagecoach driver who left Martha behind thought he was making a practical decision, solving a problem in the most expedient way. He never knew that his cruel act would set in motion a love story that would endure for generations, that would inspire countless others, that would prove that sometimes the most beautiful destinations are reached by the roughest roads. Cole and Martha's love was forged in the untamed wilderness of Wyoming, tested by the harsh realities of frontier life, and strengthened by their unwavering commitment to each other. It was a love that built homes and raised families, that created community and left a lasting legacy. It was a love that proved that happy endings aren't just for fairy tales, that they're possible for real people in the real world, if they're brave enough to fight for them. And so, in a small cemetery in South Pass City, Wyoming, 2 stones stand side by side, marking the final resting place of Cole and Martha Bridger. But their story doesn't end there. It lives on in their descendants, in the cabin in the mountains, in the memories and legends still told around campfires and dinner tables. It lives on as proof that love can overcome any obstacle, that kindness matters, that standing up for what's right can change not just one life, but generations to come. The stagecoach driver left the heavy woman behind, but the mountain man who rode after them in fury found something precious beyond measure. He found his soulmate, his partner, his love, and together they created a life that was rich and full and beautiful, a testament to the transformative power of love and the enduring strength of the human spirit. Their story reminds us all that we are worth fighting for, that love is worth believing in, and that sometimes the worst moments of our lives are actually doorways to the best chapters yet to come.